Count Dooku is a name many people know. They see him as a villain. He was a Sith Lord, Darth Tyrannus. He fought against the heroes of the Republic. He led the Separatist army in a great war. He commanded legions of battle droids. He worked for the dark side of the Force. People remember him for his red lightsaber and his cruel actions. He was an enemy of the Jedi, a man who seemed to embrace darkness without a second thought. This is the simple story we are often told. It is a story of good versus evil, light versus dark. But stories are rarely that simple. Beneath the surface of this dark figure lies a more complex man. Before he was a Sith, he was a Jedi Master. He was one of the most respected members of the Jedi Order. He was trained by the great Master Yoda himself. Dooku was a wise and powerful Jedi. He was known for his elegant lightsaber skills. He was also a brilliant teacher. He trained Qui-Gon Jinn, a Jedi known for his own independent thinking. Dooku was not born evil. He spent most of his long life serving the light. He dedicated himself to the ideals of peace and justice that the Jedi Order held dear. This history is important. It shows us that his path to the dark side was a long and complicated journey. So what changed? Why would a celebrated Jedi Master abandon everything he knew? The answer is not simple greed or a lust for power. Dooku did not fall to the dark side overnight. His journey began with disillusionment. He started to see cracks in the institutions he served. He saw problems within the Jedi Order. He saw corruption spreading through the Galactic Republic. These were not imaginary fears. They were real issues that he believed his fellow Jedi were ignoring. He felt that the Jedi had lost their way and were failing in their duty to the galaxy. We often judge Dooku by his final actions. We see the war he started and the suffering it caused. But to truly understand him, we must look at his motivations. We must see the galaxy through his eyes. He was a political idealist. He believed he was doing what was necessary to save the galaxy from itself. He saw a corrupt system that was about to collapse. He believed that a painful war was better than letting the Republic rot from the inside. Was he a villain, or was he a man who saw a terrible future and chose a terrible path to try and stop it? His story is a warning about how good intentions can lead to dark places. Dooku's decision to leave the Jedi Order was a shock to many. It was not a choice he made lightly. For decades he had been a faithful servant of the light. He believed in the Jedi Code and its principles, but over time, he grew to see the Order as stagnant and blind. He felt the Jedi had become too attached to the Republic. They were acting more like police officers for the Senate than as independent keepers of the peace. He saw them getting involved in political disputes that had no easy answers. This entanglement, he believed, was clouding their judgment and weakening their connection to the Force. He felt they were serving politicians, not the will of the Force. The Galactic Republic was also a source of Dooku's growing concern. He saw a government that was bloated and ineffective. Corruption was rampant in the Senate. Senators were easily bought and sold. Corporations and special interests had more power than the people they were supposed to represent. The Outer Rim worlds, like his home planet of Sereno, were often ignored and exploited. Dooku saw the Republic not as a beacon of democracy, but as a failing state that was unable to care for its citizens. He believed that the system was broken beyond repair. He could not understand why the other Jedi refused to see this clear and present danger. One key event that pushed Dooku away was the death of his former Padawan, Qui-Gon Jinn. Qui-Gon was also a Jedi who often questioned the Council's wisdom. He followed the living Force and trusted his instincts. When Qui-Gon was killed by a Sith Lord, Darth Maul, Dooku was devastated. He was also alarmed. The Jedi Council did not seem to take the return of the Sith seriously enough. For Dooku, this was the ultimate proof that the Jedi had lost their way. They were so caught up in their traditions and their politics that they could not see the ancient enemy that had returned to destroy them. This failure was something Dooku could never forgive or forget. So, Dooku left the Order. He felt he could no longer serve a council that he believed was blind. He could not defend a republic that he believed was corrupt. He returned to his home world of Sereno and reclaimed his title as Count. He believed that he could do more good for the galaxy from the outside. He wanted to create a new system, one that was free from the decay he saw in the Republic. His departure was not an act of betrayal in his eyes. It was an act of conscience. He was choosing to follow his own beliefs, even if it meant walking a lonely and dangerous path away from the only life he had ever known. When Dooku formed the Confederacy of Independent Systems, it was not just an army of droids, it was a political movement. He gathered planets and systems that felt ignored by the Republic. These were worlds that were tired of the Senate's corruption. They were frustrated by the endless bureaucracy and high taxes. Dooku gave them a voice. He spoke of freedom from the Republic's broken system. He promised a government that would be more efficient and more responsive to the needs of its people. For many, this was a powerful and attractive message. They did not see Dooku as a Dark Lord. They saw him as a savior, a leader who understood their problems. Dooku's arguments against the Republic were based on facts. He pointed to the Trade Federation's blockade of Naboo. He showed how large corporations could act like bullies with no consequences. The Senate was powerless to stop them. He spoke of the rampant greed that motivated many powerful senators. In his speech on Geonosis, he accused the Republic of being controlled by a Dark Lord of the Sith. He was, of course, being deceptive. He was secretly working for that same Sith Lord. But the scary part is that he was also telling the truth. The Republic was indeed under the control of Darth Sidious. Dooku used this truth to justify his actions and to rally support for his cause. He even tried to warn the Jedi. In his conversation with Obi-Wan Kenobi on Geonosis, Dooku revealed a startling secret. He told Obi-Wan that the Republic was under the control of a Sith Lord named Darth Sidious. He invited Obi-Wan to join him to destroy the Sith. Obi-Wan, loyal to the Jedi Order, refused to believe him. He could not imagine that the Jedi could be so deceived. He saw Dooku's words as just another trick, a lie to sow discord. But history shows us that Dooku was telling the absolute truth. The Jedi's inability to accept this warning was one of their greatest failures and led directly to their downfall. The separatist movement was built on a foundation of real grievances. While Dooku's methods were extreme, his diagnosis of the Republic's sickness was accurate. He saw the rot at the core of the government and knew that it would eventually destroy everything. He created the Clone Wars, a terrible conflict that cost countless lives. But in his mind, this war was a necessary evil. It was a painful surgery to cut out the cancer of corruption before it consumed the entire galaxy. He was manipulating events for his master, but he was also fighting for a cause that he genuinely believed in, a cause that resonated with millions who felt abandoned by the Republic. Dooku's deepest fears about the Republic and the Jedi Order ultimately came true. Everything he warned them about happened. The Republic he saw as corrupt and failing did not heal itself. Instead, it fell into the hands of the very Sith Lord he secretly served. Chancellor Palpatine, who was Darth Sidious, used the war. Dooku started to gain more and more power. The Senate willingly gave him emergency powers. They cheered as he dismantled their democracy piece by piece. The Republic did not fall to an outside invader. It rotted from within, exactly as Dooku had predicted it would. The final applause for the creation of the Empire was proof that he was right all along. The Jedi Order also met the tragic end that Dooku foresaw. Their blindness to the dark side's influence was their doom. They stood by Palpatine, protecting him, never realizing he was their greatest enemy. They walked into the trap he had set for them. When the time came, Palpatine executed Order 66. The clone troopers, soldiers the Jedi had led and trusted, turned on them without hesitation. The Jedi were wiped out in an instant, betrayed by the army they had created to defend the Republic. Dooku had warned Obi-Wan that the Sith controlled the Republic, but the Jedi's pride and lack of vision prevented them from seeing the truth until it was far too late. In his own way, Dooku was a tragic figure. He was a pawn in a much larger game, played by a master of deception. He believed he could control the darkness and use it for his own idealistic goals. He thought he and Darth Sidious would build a new, better galaxy together. He was wrong. Sidious had no intention of sharing power. He used Dooku to start the war and to groom Anakin Skywalker. Once Dooku had served his purpose, he was discarded. Palpatine ordered Anakin to kill the unarmed Dooku, a final cruel betrayal. In his last moments, Dooku must have realized he had been a fool, a tool for the very evil he claimed to be fighting. So was Count Dooku truly evil, or was he a fallen idealist? He saw a broken system and tried to fix it with fire. His methods were brutal, and his alliance with the Sith was a terrible mistake. He caused immense suffering across the galaxy, but his reasons for leaving the Jedi and opposing the Republic were not born from pure evil. They came from a place of genuine concern and a correct assessment of the galaxy's problems. He was right about the corruption. He was right about the Jedi's blindness. He was right about the Sith's return. Perhaps his greatest tragedy is that in trying to prevent the fall of the galaxy, he ended up becoming one of its primary architects.